Welcome back to Inside City Hall. As Americans look for signs of what to expect from a Donald Trump administration, concerns over the influence of controversial and far-right figures in the White House are mounting. Several groups have condemned Trump's appointment of Steve Bannon as the chief White House strategist and senior counselor. Before joining the Trump campaign, Bannon ran Breitbart News, which has been criticized as a platform for anti-Semitic and white supremacist views at times. We've got a special panel here to talk about all of this. Yair Rosenberg is a senior writer at Tablet Magazine. Evan Bernstein is the New York Regional Director for the Anti-Defamation League. Joining us from Washington, D.C. is Rosie Gray. She is a political reporter for BuzzFeed. Thank you all for being here. And I'm going to start with you, Rosie. You've done quite a lot of reporting about the rise of the alt-right. How would you characterize not so much its rise, but its connection and its insertion into the campaign over the last year?
Well, the most obvious link is Steve Bannon himself, who was the chairman of Breitbart News, which he explicitly has told reporters before he saw as a platform for the alt-right. And obviously, he rose to the highest ranks of the campaign, and now he'll be as the chief strategist in the White House. He'll be at the highest levels of government.
Well, I mean, when this comes up, and his defenders have already sort of tried to make this clear, what they say is, well, it's like accusing the publisher of the New York Times or holding him accountable for every word that's said there, that Breitbart himself has not written these articles, his name is not, his byline is not on top of them. To what extent does he logically or fairly bear responsibility for what's published on that site?
Look, I mean, I would sort of describe Breitbart as alt-right adjacent. Not everyone who works at Breitbart necessarily is alt-right, but it certainly is a website that's embraced certain alt-right ideas. Mm-hmm. And like I said, Steve Bannon has publicly said that the site is a platform for the alt-right. In terms of Steve Bannon's own views, I don't think that they necessarily cleanly fit into any sort of alt-right rubric per se, but there's certainly some crossover and some overlap.
And Yair, you've been really sort of, I think, pretty brave, actually, about talking about all of the hatred and vitriol that's been directed at you, right? You don't have to expose it because you know it's going to result in even more. But talk a little bit about it. I mean, the stuff is really very vicious, it's very personal, and at times, looking at it from the outside, kind of scary, I would think.
So on Twitter, I have spent a lot of the election being photoshopped into gas chambers or concentration camps or being hit with, anti-Jewish slurs of all sorts. The Anti-Defamation League came out with a report where they quantified the number of anti-Semitic tweets during the election, especially directed at Jewish journalists. And I'm proud to say that I ranked #2 in most abused journalists on Twitter during the election. But I take a certain amount of pride in exposing it and showing it to people, and so that people can see that this is out there. And also the trolls, what they want, what the alt-right wants. Some of the alt-right believes all the things they say. But some of them are more nihilists, and some of them are just there to try to make people angry and to get under their skin. Mm-hmm. And by trolling them back or making fun of them or mocking their pretensions and the various symbolisms and code words that they like to use to try to unnerve Jews and minorities, you basically turn the dynamic back around on them.
Do you ever take steps to try and identify who they are? Most of them are working under pseudonyms or false names and so forth. Do you ever sort of consider, if I could identify this person's employer and let them know what they're up to, say on company time, a lot of this would change?
So I haven't tried to find out who people are. I have had conversations with them because I try to find out, why do you do this? And also, why do you do it anonymously while telling me that you think you're winning and Trump is winning and history is on your side? If that was really the case, why do you do this anonymously? Mm-hmm. And I take a certain comfort in the fact that they almost consistently say that if you knew who I was, I'm not stupid, I would lose my job, I would face a lot of opprobrium in my community. Mm-hmm. And as long as they're saying that, I worry less. I will give an example. When I was, soon after Trump was elected, I got a direct message, which I shared on Twitter, from, one of these neo-Nazi type followers. And, they said, Trump won, you'll be the first to be sent to the camps, that sort of thing designed to make me upset. But then they attached a photo of either them or somebody else, you can't tell, doing some sort of Nazi salute in front of a swastika. But they're hiding their face with their arm, mm-hmm. so that you can't see who they are. And I said, if you really thought you'd won, you would show your face.
Right.
but they don't actually believe yet that they've won, and that's why I think a lot of decent people should pay attention to this and fight back.
Anti-Jewish hatred and bigotry is an ancient problem.
Sure.
Is this a new version of an ancient problem, or is this something entirely new?
I think it's a lot of the same symbolism that we've seen. Clearly, the use of the swastika, which has been one of the mainstays of showing kind of Jew hatred. We've seen a lot of that clearly since the end of the election in the last 7 days, an uptick that we've not seen in quite some time at the ADL, especially in our New York office. But I think the hatred's always been there, and I think that now you have a whole group of people within the alt-right movement that have been really emboldened to really express themselves in ways that they maybe didn't feel comfortable doing prior to 7 days ago, and I think that's what's so concerning for us.
Well, throughout the campaign, there were accusations directed at Donald Trump himself that he was giving sort of winks and nods, that he was sort of pretending he didn't know who the former director of, former leader of the Ku Klux Klan was. David Duke. He's playing games with that. There was that offensive, and you and others, I think, sort of identified where it came from, this ad against crooked Hillary. Classic anti-Semitic imagery, her with the Star of David superimposed against piles of money, accusations of all kinds of atrocious sort of corruption going on. And Donald Trump himself very specifically, once it became a controversy, very specifically said it's a sheriff's star and they should never have changed it, and he supports it and so forth. What are we to make of that?
I think it shows that, either he's really that naive to some of this stuff, or he's just choosing to pick and choose really what he really knows and doesn't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, we at the ADL called out the star as well. We thought it was incredibly offensive. In classic stereotypical kind of imagery, and I think that it's the challenge for us when this kind of stuff happens is we want people that are going to take ownership over it. If it's truly an error, if something really happens in that way, take ownership over it quickly. And I think that's where the challenge has been. And I think clearly now also with the recent appointment of Steve Bannon, I guess, now understanding what the historical references with him, with Breitbart, and what he said publicly, as Rosie said, saying that Breitbart is really and proud to be a platform for the alt-right. That's something that's very concerning. Right,
and so Rosie, what's the state of the conversation down there right now? I mean, when a name gets floated and you get the kind of pushback that we're seeing right now, the sort of outcry from many, many different places. Sometimes that is the prelude to maybe a reversal or a change of course. Do you have any sense of whether or not that's going to happen?
I don't think there's going to be any sort of reversal on this. I think that Donald Trump looks at Steve Bannon as someone who was instrumental in bringing him to the White House, and he'd like to lean on his advice in the White House. And I also think that, Donald Trump has never really let controversy get in the way of doing something he wanted to do before. It's certainly true that there are issues with the Steve Bannon pick, beyond just the obvious controversy. In part, it's because Steve Bannon has used Breitbart to attack establishment Republicans and to attack people like Paul Ryan, who Donald Trump is now going to have to really work hand in glove with. So he's really actually, by choosing Steve Bannon, he's kind of set himself up for a certain amount of conflict going forward.
For sure, just based on what you said. On the other hand, there's this question of normalization that people have really sort of feared would be a real victory for an odious and despicable movement. Do you think that is happening?
So, are you asking?
Good. Yeah. Good. Yeah.
So I would say that absolutely, you've seen the KKK, you've seen neo-Nazi leaders of all stripes praise Bannon's appointment. They see it as validation of their worldview. That may not be what Trump intended. Trump might, again, just as Rosie said, took somebody who helped him win and put him in the White House. But Trump does this a lot, which is he takes people who are adjacent to ugly causes or involved in ugly causes and uses them for his purposes and refuses to apologize for their excesses. Mm-hmm. And so as long as someone like Steve Bannon is in the White House, people like the KKK, like David Duke, who are praising his appointment, will feel that they have an ear and a sympathetic source in the White House, and that may empower them to act more in actual society outside the White House, thinking that some authority is on their side.
Okay, we're going to leave it there for now. The watchword here is vigilance from all sources. Yair Rosenberg, Rosie Gray, Evan, thank you for coming by. We're going to all keep an eye on this. Right now, we're going to take a short break. Coming up, as Republicans prepare to take control of the White House and both houses